Welcome to the show. Well, it's that time of the season again when we get to choose our favorites from 6 different vehicle categories.
But before we get started, a brief explanation. We can't possibly list every single car we've driven this year, so what we've done is narrow it down to 5 finalists. And then each of us has picked a winner from those 5. So with that out of the way, let's get started. And first up is Best Family Sedan. And the All-Stars are the Acura Vigor, Hyundai Sonata, Pontiac Bonneville, Toyota Camry, and Volvo 940 wagon. What's your choice here, Tony?
Well, it's a toughie, Ted. The Sonata's an old favorite, and I love that new Bonneville. But for me, the tops has to be the Toyota Camry. In my opinion, this car is so good, it makes me wonder whether a family car can ever get any better. The build quality is as good as anything on the market, regardless of price. I just can't believe how well all the panels fit and how accurate the detail work is. The Camry is roomy and comfortable and has all the trunk room a traveling family is ever likely to need short of a van. The Camry runs and handles like a dream, and both engine options, a 4 and a 6, are models of efficiency. Add to this that it's a beautifully styled car inside and out, and you have a family sedan that must have other manufacturers wondering what they'll come up with next.
Are you a Camry fan too, Ted? Yes, I am, Tony, but this is a family sedan category, and you have to decide what's more important, value for money or the size of the vehicle. But in this case, the Pontiac Bonneville SE fulfills both requirements. It can seat 6, is the biggest car of this group by far, and has the most reasonable price tag. None of the other cars can touch it for value. It'll run you almost half of what you'd pay for a Volvo or Vigor, and the Camry, although it's an excellent automobile, is much smaller. The Bonneville is no slouch in the performance department either. It has surprisingly good handling and acceleration, and is very much at home on the freeway or on back roads. All in all, the Bonneville is a good package and deserves to be the winner in this category. So are you ready to change your mind yet?
Well, I don't think so. I do like that Bonneville. It's a super car, and maybe in time when I've driven it more, I'll change my mind. But the Camry, and I keep reiterating this, it's so well built.
I don't want to convey the impression that I don't like the Camry. The Camry is a wonderful car, but it's just that I am so impressed with what Pontiac has done with the Bonneville of late that I had to give it the nod.
Well, it's certainly a more interesting looking car, the Bonneville. It's really I suppose you could say that the Camry is a little bit generic, but the Bonneville is a very exciting looking car inside and out to me.
You can also seat 6 with the Bonneville, which is really important to me. You can't do that with the Camry. I think the Camry is probably more refined and probably a better performing car.
Well, maybe it is. Got to cut you off here, Ted, because the next category is up already, and this is the economy cars, the affordable ones. And the finalists are the Dodge Shadow, the Honda Civic, the Hyundai Elantra, the Mazda 323, and the Plymouth Colt. So what do you say, Ted?
These are all wonderful little cars, but pound for pound, dollar for dollar, it's got to be the Honda Civic. Manufacturers put a lot of time and effort into their so-called entry-level models because they want people to stay with them when they move upscale. And it shows. The 5 finalists this year are all very good cars, and it was difficult to choose between them. But for overall quality of construction and sheer drivability, the Honda Civic takes it. Honda have an ability to make all their models a real pleasure to drive, and the Civic is assembled like an expensive watch. It's what I like to call a driver-friendly automobile. I'm still thinking about the restyling job, and the engine could be quieter, but the new Civic is such a good car I can overlook both of those shortcomings. Once again, it's the benchmark of this market segment. You have to agree with this.
Well, I know the Civic's good, Ted, and I also like the Hyundai Elantra, but, you know, I drove a 323 recently, and to surprise myself, actually, I rate it tops. The drivetrain is surprisingly refined, and handling is excellent by any standards. Like all Mazda products, the 323 is very well built and finished. The driving position, for me at least, is just about perfect. Styling is very pleasing, and cabin room and cargo space are better than you might expect. Driving the 323 reminded me of my much-loved Volkswagen Gti, which is about the highest praise I can give to a small car. It's more responsive and agile than any economy car has any right to be. Well, Ted, I like the Civic, but I think it's gotten a little expensive. And this one, the 323, really impressed me, although I drove it when it first came out quite a long time ago.
You know what both of these cars have in common? They're both friendly inside. There are other cars in this category, like the Tercel and a few others, that are just as good in some ways, but they're not as hospitable inside. Like the Civic is very nicely laid out inside.
Well, that's
it's
true.
Comfortable inside.
That's right, and the 323 is very well made. It's very beautifully made. I mean, if somebody like BMW was to build a very small hatchback, this is what it'd look like inside. It's very well made, and the driving position is right on. Yeah. The handling, the feel of the car. I think
one of the reasons that I picked the Civic is that there's a wider choice of engines here. You can go from 92 horsepower to 125 with the Civic, and you can get any kind of Civic you want. And as you say, the EX-V model, which is the upscale model, it's like a subcompact luxury car.
Well,
really.
it is, and I'm kind of a fan of small luxury cars, which have never really taken off that much in North American markets. But there's no reason why you shouldn't take a small car. The British used to do it years ago, and it worked very well.
Yeah, once again, I want to stress that I have nothing against the 323, and this was a very, very close call, but I think I have to give the nod to the Civic. Anyway, we've got to move on, so stay with us, and we'll be right back with our best of the season.
On today's show were tested on driver's seat this season. In Best Truck and Utility Vehicle, there were very few introductions this year, and we just have 4 finalists, and here they are. The Ford F-150 pickup, the Isuzu Rodeo, the Jeep Cherokee, and the VW Eurovan. What's your pick of these, Ted?
Well, it's too bad we didn't have more vehicles to drive in this category, but what we did have, we liked. Nonetheless, of those we drove, the new Volkswagen Eurovan gets my vote as the best of the bunch. It's not perfect, and VW still has work to do, especially regarding ergonomics, but the Eurovan is the epitome of practicality. It's absolutely huge inside, and so different from the old model, it might as well have come from a different company altogether. I must admit that I'm less than excited about the Eurovan styling, but in this category, that's not really a consideration. The Eurovan is simply the most useful rig in this group. No, it won't take you off-road, but it'll carry anything you care to put in it, and it's built like a tank. It may not have the charm of its predecessor, but then again, that's not the point. Well, now, you own one of the last generations. Did you like this one as much?
Well, I did, Ted, and even if we tested more vehicles in this category on the show over the season, I'd still have chosen the VW Eurovan.
This must be the roomiest of all minivans, and although it looks a little like a lot of competitors, it still has character of its own. I've always been attracted by the way VW builds vehicles, and this one convinces me that they're still on the right track. Fit and finish is outstanding, and the new 5-cylinder engine is a big improvement on the old flat 4. Also welcome is the optional 5-speed gearbox, though my choice would be the automatic. Few vans have better instrumentation, and seating is great for all passengers from the driver to the folks at the back. The Eurovan is on the pricey side, but VW has an excellent reputation for long life, and there's no reason to believe that this one won't carry on this tradition. VW's come a long way since its old hippie microbus days, and the Eurovan is as refined and sophisticated as any domestic or Japanese van, and better than most.
Well, at last we agree, Ted.
Being a big fan of the older generation, I didn't know whether the new one would be any good, but I was really happy with what they did. It's huge inside, lots of room, good power. Stylistically, but it doesn't really matter what it looks like. I don't think it does.
Well, that's true. It's ultra practical, and I think there's so much room behind the back row of seats. It has to be, I didn't measure this up, but it has to be the class leader there. There's lots of room. I would put this almost between a compact van and a full-size van. I mean, I like the Rodeo a lot, but, you know, I think I would always choose a van over a sport truck.
I'll tell you one thing it does have over the rear engine job is it has much better handling. The handling is actually quite good, this thing. The turning circle is quite small, and it surprised me at how good it is at handling.
That's true, and of course the power, wonderful. I mean, you get 5-cylinder engine, way better than the old one. The old van was quite a slug, and you were right there with the gravel trucks on the long hills. Yeah. The 5-cylinder is a very nice
I'll tell you
engine.
what, I'd love to get my hands on the Westphalia version of this. I haven't seen one yet, but I can't wait to see one. I know it's going to be huge inside.
It's going to be great. I've had a brief look at one, and I can tell you they're going to be very, very good. Old Westphalia addicts will probably argue this point, but it's going to be good, and it's got that extra power.
Time to move on, sorry. Next up is a fun category, and that's Best Performance Car. And the contenders are BMW 850i, Jaguar XJS, Lexus SC400, Mazda RX-7, and the Subaru Svx. A tough category to choose from, Tony.
Oh, that's right, Ted. There's not one of these I wouldn't give 5 years of my life for, but there's a recession going on, and I'm going to let price take center stage.
Make no mistake about it, the Subaru Svx is the best sports coupe to come along in years at anything near the price that's asked for it, and it gets my vote. The 850i is more sophisticated, and the SC400 is prettier, but Subaru's done a great job with the SVX, and buying one won't break the bank. The chassis is outstanding, and handling, as a result, is very good indeed. The flat six engine is a jewel of a motor and provides lots of torque and power. Few cars will please you more when you climb inside, and I even like the show car styling of the cabin greenhouse. The back seats are usable by adults, and those up front get pampered as well as they would in any $100,000 supercar. Subaru has no history of making cars like this, and sales may flag as a result. But if there's any justice in the motoring world, the SVX should be a hot seller.
Well, I love driving this car, and I love being seen in it, but I could say that about all of them.
Yeah, there are some spectacular performance cars out there these days from all the manufacturers. But nonetheless, we can only pick one here, and all things considered, I have to go with the SVX as well. Considering that this is Subaru's first time out in this market segment, the SVX is a triumph. It may not be quite as fast as, let's say, the RX-7 or SC400, but the SVX is still a very quick car and has one thing they don't: four-wheel drive. Sure, so does the Plymouth Laser AWD, but it's a much more cheaply made vehicle and isn't half the car the SVX is. The SVX offers exceptional performance and handling, is beautifully styled, very well put together, and, best of all, has an accessible price tag. Flat-out performance is one thing, but we live in lean times, and a car sticker price is very important. With that in mind, the SVX takes this category hands down. Well, it looks like we agree again. Something must be going on here.
Well, this is such a great car. I mean, the chassis is so good, it handles so well. One feels very good in it, and I think it looks spectacular.
Best of all, for the price, for the amount of money you're paying, which is about 40 grand for this one, you're getting full-time four-wheel drive. Nobody else can offer that. And that alone makes this car worthwhile. But even if it didn't have that, I think I'd still go for it, because I just love the way it
Well, I think so too.
behaves.
That's a bonus, you know, because you get cars like very expensive cars like Porsche 928s and so forth, not that much better or more interesting than this car, and they don't have that four-wheel drive.
I take your point about Subaru, this being their sort of first luxury car, and I hope people overlook that and take a good look at this car, because it's definitely worth it.
Well, I hope so, because Subaru has no tradition here, of course, and I mean, it might be that people won't even bother to look at it. There's so much competition in the marketplace, but most of it's much more expensive.
It's almost as if they took the XT, which was a horrible car, I have to say that, and did everything that car doesn't have to make this one. So they just took it aside and said, well, let's make a proper one this time.
Well, that's right. The XT was a little too funky. We'll be back with Best Upmarket Car, so stay with us, please.
Upmarket car, regardless of price. And the finalists are the BMW 850i, the Cadillac Seville Sds, the Jaguar XJS, the Lexus SC400, and the Mercedes 500 SEL. Well, Tony, decisions.
Well, exactly. There are 5 of my all-time favorite cars here, but let's give a domestic a chance for a change.
I'm just repeating what everybody knows by now when I say that the Seville SDS is the best Cadillac to come along in years. With its dramatic yet practical styling, it stands apart even from rival luxury models. The cabin is better than just about any other effort in this class and manages to combine good taste with practicality, something Caddy has failed to do for decades. Performance is excellent too, and handling is surprisingly good for what is quite a large car. There are some minor gripes, and this is to be expected with a brand new model, but overall it's a fine piece of work. I have tremendous admiration for the new Mercedes S-Class, but by no stretch of the imagination can these cars be described as having eye appeal. The SDS manages to look smaller and prettier than any rival, and for that alone it could win my vote.
Well, we must be living in a changing world, Ted, when I pick a Cadillac here.
I don't think I've ever encountered such a great crop of upmarket cars in this show. If I had my druthers, every one of these things would be parked in my driveway. But for sheer presence, panache, and beauty, it's got to be the Jag. I've admired this car since it was introduced 15 years ago, and now that Jaguar has installed a 5-speed manual transmission and a performance 6-cylinder engine, the XJS is almost perfect. Updating the controls and instrumentation is also a factor, and so is the fact that this car is tossable. I like luxury cars as much as the next guy, but I also want them to be drivable, and the XJS offers more driving kicks for the dollar than anything else in this group. I also think it's the best looking, although that's just personal taste. How much do I like it? Let's put it this way. If I was in the market for this type of car, I'd even consider trading my Morgan in. And believe me, if I trade my Morgan for it, I like it.
And so you should, Ted, too. Actually, I must say that I like the Jaguar too, and I think last season I did pick a Jaguar in this category. But that new Cadillac to me is an absolutely wonderful car, and it does have all that room in it. And the Jaguar is a kind of a selfish car. It's got a great big, it's a long, large car, and it's got very little room in it.
That's the category we're choosing here, is that selfish. I mean, this is an indulgence, right? You know why I picked this thing? That engine and gearbox. If it was the old V12 3-speed automatic combination, I probably wouldn't have picked it. But I just love the way this thing performs and handles it. I may even buy one. I like it that much.
Well, it does transform the car.
It's a splendid car. It really is.
Yeah, I don't know why it wasn't done years ago, because it transforms it completely with that manual transmission. It's just a supercar. Not that it's a bad car with an automatic, but it's such a wonderful
And the design
machine.
is timeless. I think this design could be around for another 10 years. Probably will be the way things are going for Jaguar, but I hope they keep it because I think it looks smashing. I mean,
well, that's right. Even if Honda did steal the rear lights for the Prelude, I kind of like the old lights. But no, it's a great car, and so's the Cadillac. I guess it's one of those things that it's I'd love to have the chance to pick from one of these.
Again, I'm happy that Cadillac has done what they've done with the XJS. It's a fine effort, and it's a very good car. But I guarantee you, if you put these two on a piece of highway, the Jaguar would leave it behind.
Well, I think it would, Ted. Okay, now it's time to go to the next category, and in this one we choose our personal favourites, cars we'd actually buy ourselves. And since this is a personal list, we have separate short lists, and Ted, you're up with the first one.
Now, this may be my favorite list of all. Anyway, the contenders are the Acura Vigor, the Honda Civic, Isuzu Rodeo, the Jaguar XJS, and the Subaru SVX. The thing to keep in mind here is that these cars are different. This is strictly personal choice. Yes, I have chosen the Jaguar XJS because I consider it to be a modern-day classic, but in their own ways, the other cars in this group have much to offer. The SVX is an excellent automobile, and so is the Civic, but swan diving into fantasy, the XJS is my choice as the most desirable car I've driven this season. I mean, just look at it. How can you not like a car like this? And quite frankly, I prefer this excellent 4-liter 6 to the V12. It makes the XJS much more appealing. And although this is undeniably a luxury car, it's not that expensive. The Mercedes 500 SL, by way of comparison, costs almost twice as much. I don't want to sound like a Jaguar commercial, but this car deserves more attention than it gets. I think you should buy me one, Tony.
Well, Ted, I don't think you're being honest. I mean, you must be making a lot more money than me, because my list is quite different, and here it is. The Audi 80, the BMW 325i, the Ford Taurus SHO, the Mazda MX-3, and the VW Eurovan. Now, I could be tempted by the practicality of the Eurovan and the SHO, but for me it has to be the BMW 325i.
To me, this car is just about perfect in every respect, from styling to drivetrain and from cabin comfort to handling. After my very first drive, I was convinced that this was the finest compact sedan in the world, and nothing has shaken that view since. I just love the way it looks and feels. BMW inline sixes have always been a delight, and this one is no exception. The cockpit is a delightful place in which to operate, and you just know that those engineers at BMW simply love to drive their cars. It'd take a couple of shows to get into all the engineering attributes of this car, and we'd still be missing some important points. All I can say is that if every car buyer tried one of these before making a choice, BMW would never be able to make enough of them.
And I thought you were a BMW fan, too.
Come on, I love this car. How could I argue about it? But this category is just pure fantasy, almost. This is just the kind of car that I like emotionally. And I guess maybe I'm a little bit overzealous in my admiration for the Jaguar. I don't know. All I know is that when I look at it, I feel I really want it. You know what I mean?
Well, I know, and again, I have to agree that Jag's a wonderful car, but there's no question to my mind that the 325i is the best car in its category anybody makes anywhere in the world. Yeah, Japan, North America, Europe, anywhere. It's a wonderful car. To me, it looks great, and those stylings in the eye of the beholder, but everything about it to me is perfect.
You've backed me into a corner here. I am not going to sit here and argue about how much I don't like the 325. I love it, but it's not a car that I would buy. Let's just say we had unlimited money. We could go out and buy anything we wanted. Well, I would buy the Jaguar without even thinking twice about it. I would just go out and buy it because it looks better. It's got much more prestige, but these cars are kind of apples and oranges, really. We can't argue, you know, I mean...
But the 325, I mean, it is more affordable, and I'm trying to be very realistic here. This is something I really would buy. It'd be a push, but I could buy it. But, you know, I think that the new 318s are going to be a hard thing to turn down, too, because the engine's almost as good as this one.
Yeah, anyway, we'll be right back with our least favorite cars of the year and our car of...
With the Ford Crown Victoria. I found this car was oversized, too much front and rear overhang, very squishy suspension, a lot of diving under braking, a car really that seemed to me to have been conceived in the 70s. It's been praised quite highly in the automotive press, but for me, They didn't do a very good job with it. They wasted a lot of engineering talent on this car. It's not a car for the times like the Taurus was, for example. It's a car that I would stay well away from myself, but lots of people will probably like it. What's yours, Ted?
Well, like you, my least favorite car is a full-size one, a full-size monster, the Buick RoadMonster. In fact, I hate everything about this car. I hate the way it looks. I hate the fact that you can get a vinyl roof and fake spoke wheels with it. I hate the interior. It's uncomfortable. It's underpowered. It doesn't brake well. It doesn't handle well. It's uglier than sin, and it's completely out of step with the 1990s. This car has no business to be alive. I don't know why they bothered making it. Who's going to buy this car? The amount of money they expended developing this thing and making it can't justify the way it looks. No one's going to buy this thing.
On a more positive note, let's sum up our best of the year. Family sedan, I chose Toyota Camry. Ted chose Pontiac Bonneville. Economy car, Ted chose Honda Civic. I chose Mazda 323. Truck or utility vehicle, Ted chose the Volkswagen Eurovan. I agreed, the VW Eurovan. Best performance car, I took the Subaru Svx. Once again, Ted agreed, Subaru Svx. Best upmarket car, I took the Cadillac Seville, and Ted the Jaguar XJS. Best personal choices, Ted took again the Jaguar XJS, and I took the BMW 325i. Now to wrap the program up, our best car of the year. Ted.
What is the best car of the year? There were a lot of choices and a lot of contenders, but the decision was unanimous. It's the Subaru Svx.
Well, Ted, we tested some great cars this season, but this one had to come out on top.
Unfortunately, we can only pick one. I think we've driven, what, 120 cars this season? At least that many.
Yeah.
So this car doubles as a performance car, as a luxury car, and it's got a very attractive sticker price. So all things considered, I think it has to be car of the year. There's some very close contenders, but we can only pick one, so this is going to be it.
Well, that's true. It's almost an exotic car. It looks wonderful. It's even got room in the back seat. It's a very nicely built car, and it goes well and it handles well. What more can you ask?
It's got four-wheel drive. We've talked about this before. We don't want to overdo it, but I really think that this is a very good choice. It pretty well beats everybody else, hand down. So from all of us at driver's seat, congratulations to Subaru for the driver's seat car of the year for the SVX.
Well, that's all for this week, and we hope you enjoyed our best of the season. Join us again, and we'll put you in the driver's seat.